How will the war in Gaza and the Middle East affect you, our mortgage rates, our inflation figures, our economy? If you think you're safe and you're away from that region, think again. Hi, this is Charles Kelly, Money Tips. Today I want to talk about the war in Gaza. I've just done a TV interview as a panel guest for Press TV. They cover this situation very well on there. And I was particularly talking about the economic impact of this war in Gaza. And what they've said here is that according to the UN, nearly 90% of Gaza's 2.3 million people are now displaced. I understand that the unemployment level there is over 85%. And if you think, in the UK, if we have 3 or 4% unemployment, that's considered a disaster. They've got 85% unemployment, and that was before Christmas. The economy has ground to a halt. The whole region has been affected because everything around there, Egypt, Jordan, the neighboring countries, including Israel, are suffering. They say that the Arab countries surrounding Gaza, their economies could be affected by a drop of 2.3% in GDP, 10 billion pounds worth of lost business to the economy in those areas. And Israel too. I mean, their estimated spend on this war is going to be 60 billion and counting, depending on how long it goes on for. So there's going to be an effect. And if you think you're sitting there in London, in America and Europe and think, well, this is not going to affect me, mate, I'm okay. What's for dinner? Think again, because look at now what's happening with the shipping. I want to share a screen with you here because we can see more clearly on a map here. But if you look at what's happening in the Red Sea, the shipping is that there's been bombings against ships by the Houthi rebels, and this means that shipping has to now navigate halfway around the world to avoid this area. Let's just have a look here. So I don't know if you can see this map here of where a vessel has been hit now from above by missiles. This is today on Monday the 14th by missiles near the Yemeni city of Aden. Of course, that was once occupied by Britain, Aden. Okay, so if the shipping's coming through here to get across here in either this way or that way, it's not going to happen now because of what's going on here. And this is why America and Britain have now over the weekend had strikes, missile strikes on Yemen. But if you think the shipping can get through here through the Suez Canal, which I'm moving along here, from this part of the world into Europe, now it has to go all the way around Africa. And same with the other way around, it has to go all the way around Africa. So that has already put up oil prices in the West, and that could mean higher inflation. And what does higher inflation usually mean? Higher interest rates. I said in another recent podcast, this just gone, that the inflation hasn't gone away. And we've seen inflation rise in Germany, in the Eurozone, and I think it's about to rise in America. But just when we thought inflation was getting under control, it seems to be rearing its ugly head again. And oil prices are one of the things that can really hit inflation because everything depends on oil and transport. So if oil rose to $80 a barrel last week, this could start to hit inflation. And then if interest rates go up, that could stop the decline in interest rates we've had recently. We've had some good news on interest rates, but what will this war do? And don't forget that in most previous wars, they're led by some economic problem. And there's a saying that when all else fails, they take you to war. And we see that, the economy in America, look at the debt they've got, 33 trillion in debt. They've got serious problems there. China has got debt. Japan has got debt. Japan is printing money like there's no tomorrow. And of course, the UK is again, a multi-trillion-dollar debt and counting. So now they're talking about what central bank digital currencies. It's like we can feel that there's some sort of economic reset coming, and that is usually preceded by a war. When all else fails, they take it to war. In times of economic climate, when they need to sort of reset the economy, a war seems to arise from nowhere. And don't forget, America, in its 300-year history, only 18 years of that 300-year history has been without war. In all the other years, they've been in some sort of war or conflict internally or externally. And I'm sorry to say this, but the governments, not the people, but the governments of the West seem to promote war. They seem to like a war, and that costs billions. I mean, Rishi Sunak was in Ukraine recently, saying we're going to stand by Ukraine, which is all very laudable. But he then said we're going to give you 2 billion. Okay, that's fine. Thanks very much, Rishi. That's very generous of you. I mean, did you give it this from your own money or from your father-in-law's money? No, it's from taxpayers' money. Did he ask Parliament about this? Did he ask me about this? I'm a taxpayer. Did he say, Charles, is it all right if I give away 2 billion? No, of course not. I mean, it's crazy. They talk about a billion now as if it's £100 or £1,000. Oh, give away a billion here and a billion there, 2 billion for this, 2 billion for that. I mean, they haven't got enough money to pay the junior doctors. They said that would cost nearly a billion. Can't do that. Oh no, no way. But yeah, send money to Ukraine, to, as far as I'm concerned, was a corrupt regime for many, many years. They'll send that money there. And if you think what a billion is, it's £1,000 million. That's 1,000 million. That's a millionaire times 1,000. If you're a millionaire, you could probably live on that for the rest of your life. But imagine a billionaire. You could live on that for the rest of your life. Your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren could live on that money for the rest of their lives. It would be a generational change. And yet a billion is just thrown around just like there's no tomorrow. I mean, Israel, 60 billion on a war. Missiles. Some of these missiles can cost hundreds of millions of pounds, and they're firing them out like crazy, like fireworks, So they've always seemed to have money for wars. Well, do they have money? Is it borrowed money? Is it more debt for us to pay back in the future? But it's a very worrying time, because if you think of the First World War, it escalated from a dispute between, the Archduke of Austria and Serbia, and he went to Serbia, didn't he? What was the city? Sarajevo, got assassinated. So a guy gets assassinated. So what? That was the spark that led to the First World War. And when there was a First World War, I don't forget you had the German royal family and the British royal family all interrelated and getting on with each other. Suddenly they're at each other's throats. And that war was supposed to end in 6 months. By Christmas, they said. It went on for 4 years. It probably was the start of the downfall of the British Empire, the downfall of Britain as a world superpower, as the reserve currency. And look what's happened since. Then that led then to the Second World War. So you never know what small events can lead to wars. We're seeing, it's very worrying times at the moment. These things can escalate up. And then, don't forget we've got China and Taiwan, and that's going on there. America sending a delegation out there, has sent congrats to the new Taiwanese prime minister. That's already angered China for interfering. So we don't know what's going to happen. One thing we do know is happening is that America is the reserve currency. The dollar is the reserve currency of the world. So most trade is done in dollars. So if, say, Iran wants to sell their oil to the West, they would have to go through the channels and sell it in dollars, but they're under sanctions. So they can't do that. So what have they done? Russia has now formed a coalition, and this is a long-term plan, called the BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. But this is now spreading. This is now a bigger organization now. It includes Iran, it includes Saudi. Up until recently, it included Argentina. They've dropped out because they've got a new president who's more in favor of linking with America. But this coalition represents a very large proportion of the world's population and GDP. And it means that those countries can then trade without using the dollar. So Iran can sell oil to China, and China pays them in their own currency, and so on. So and then they can trade back with those currencies. So what will happen with the dollar? I mean, at the moment, the dollar is still the currency to have. You can't go around the world, with any old currency and do trade. You do need dollars, right? So it's still strong at the moment. I think it's still the place to be. But what will happen in the future? Are we seeing the end of the US empire, just as we saw the end of the British Empire, especially after the Second World War, when you had the Bretton Woods Agreement, and the pound was then no longer the world reserve currency. And at that time, I think there was $4 to a pound, right? $4 to a pound. What is it now? What are the currencies now? They're just bits of paper that they print. And if you think of the rise in the price of assets like property, you wonder, have the property prices really risen that much, or is it just that the currency asset has gone down and leaving the property still up there? We know that the currencies are, if you think about what you could do with £10 or £20 or £100 just 20 or 30 years ago, and what you can do with it now, you can see what's happening. So what do you have to do with this? What do you have to do to prepare? Well, I would just keep an eye on events. I would certainly be, watching my pennies this year, following the money tips that I give out here so that you can save as much money as possible, because I know a lot of people are still suffering from higher interest rates, from higher fuel costs and food costs. And even though they say inflation is down here, it's really, probably more like 10 to 15% if you take everything into account, like food and the costs that are probably manipulated in some way. So I think this is a year to be careful. We're not out of the woods yet. We're definitely not out of the woods yet. I think we'll see a big stock market correction this year, and probably a correction in property prices. So that could be good news for first-time buyers, of course, if they can get themselves on the property ladder. Interest rates, we'll have to see what happens. We've seen interest rates fall in, but yeah, they say there's a 4% fixed rate, but it's got a £7,000 fee. Well, that's not a 4% fixed rate. A 2 or 5 year fixed rate at 4% with a £7,000 fee is just ridiculous. It is really just ridiculous. It's not really a 4% rate at all. And I don't know how long these things can last. Lenders have come down with they've reduced their interest rates. Why? Because they can't lend. If they don't lend, they don't eat, and they have to start laying off staff, which has happened. So this year, I think it's very worrying times with all these wars going on. Very worrying times that the government seems so keen to take us to war. I mean, let's face it, if Biden sends troops to war, he's not going to be affected, is he? He's not going to die. But these people will send thousands of people to their deaths. It's almost psychopathic. It's crazy, really, that they're so quick to do that. And at the end of the day, when everything's smashed up and people are dead, what do? They have to start talking. So I would say more jaw and less war is the way forward. So that's just my little rant of the week about the war. Don't think you're not affected, because these things have it's a small world now. We're already seeing oil prices rise. We are going to see more turmoil in the stock market and for property prices in the West. So just be careful. I think you've got to watch your money these days. You've got to be careful how you spend your money, careful how you save and invest your money. And that's why I put out my podcast, my webinars every week, which I'll put a link up to that. And you may have seen my recent podcast on gold and how gold could fit into your strategy. Central banks are buying gold in record numbers. They're really, the amount of gold the demand for gold has gone up by over 90% in the last year. So they see something going on. Could there be a BRICS currency backed by gold? I don't know. I don't know if there's enough gold in the world to do that, but gold could certainly fit into your strategy as a safe haven for your money in these times of trouble, turmoil, I'm saying. So do look out for that. Check my podcast. I interviewed a guy from a gold company called Josh Saul. He gives a really great talk on how gold fits in with things like stocks, the stock market, stocks and shares, property, crypto, where gold sits in. He's not saying that all your money should go in gold, but he is saying that there's a place for it in these markets, especially when you're leaving your money a lot of money in cash. If you've got a lot of money invested in cash in the bank, you're losing real spending power on that cash. I know you can get slightly higher interest rates now, but a lot of people are sitting with money in the bank on old deposit accounts earning 1%, 2%, 3%. That is losing money, and it's been losing money for a long time. It's losing buying power. Remember, cash over the long term has gone down in value, that the amount you can buy with cash has gone down in value due to inflation, whereas assets, property, stock market, the S&P 500, even the FTSE have gone up in value, and gold, of course, and gold and silver in general has gone up. Gold has done very well over the last 10 years. So do check out that podcast. and I will see you again on the next broadcast. Thanks a lot. This is Charles Kelly, Money Tips. Thank you.